Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, Assalatu Wassalamu ala Rasulillah. In the last video, we have seen the for loop. That is, it was used to repeat a certain set of statements based on some conditions. And there are three types of such loops in which you can use these three loops to repeat statements. The first of which was the for loop, and the second of those loops is a do loop, do while loop. So in this video, we'll be looking at the do loop. So the basic difference between a for loop and a do loop is that in the for loop, before executing the statements inside a for loop, the conditions should be satisfied. But in the do while loop, it's the other way around. First, in the do while loop, first the statements inside the do while loop will be executed once, and then it will go for the condition, and if the condition is true, then the loop will be repeated. So we'll be looking that in a simple program. We'll do the same multiplication program here as well. So first we'll go to insert mode, then include a directory file, hash include stdio.h. Now we'll be going for a main program. So as we have already seen, we have first declared two variables, a comma b, or in the previous video we have taken variable comma I. So now first we need to take the input from the user. So we are first telling the user to give the input, enter a value for multiplication table \n for new line, and now we are reading the input using a scanf function. So we need to specify the %d format specifier because it is the integer, and then we need to use an address operator to store the value in the variable. Now we need to display the multiplication table, and that is to be repeatedly displayed. So we are using another loop, that is do while loop. So the structure for a do while loop is as follows. First we begin with the keyword do, and then inside this loop we need to write, at the end of the loop we'll write while, and then the condition will appear here, and the condition for the in the previous program was until I less than or equals to 10. So this will be the condition for termination of the loop, and as there is no initialization segment here as it was in the for loop, so we need to initialize the variable before the do loop itself. So we initialize I equals to 1. So as you can see, in the do while loop there is no initialization or increment section, only we have a condition section at the end of the do while loop, which is used to check whether the condition is true or not to repeat the statements inside the do while loop. Now we need to display, so we use printf statement, printf. Now we need to display in a multiplication table order. So first we use %d format specifier, then the multiplication symbol, then again a %d to display the value, then equals, then again the %d. Now the first %d is the variable which the user has entered, so we write here variable, and then the second one is the I which is incrementing, and the third one is the multiplication of both of those, variable into I. And as you can see, there is no increment section also in the do while loop. So before the loop ends, we need to increment the value of I as well. So I equals to I plus 1. So this is the syntax for the for loop in a do while representation. So as it does not have any initialization section, we need to initialize the variable before the loop begins. If you write the initialization inside the loop, then every time when the loop executes, this variable will be initialized, so you cannot do that. So you need to write the initialization before the loop, then do is the keyword to begin the do while loop, then whatever the statements you need to write inside the do while loop, increment the value of the variable, and then finish the do while loop with a while keyword. Inside the brackets you need to specify the condition at which the do while loop should terminate, and followed by with a semicolon. So now let us execute this program. So colon wq to save it, then cc space do.c. There are no errors. Now we'll execute it, ./a.out. Now the enter value for multiplication table. I think I have missed the backslash n again. We'll just go into the program and see in this printf. So insert mode, then again backslash n colon wq to save, then again to execute previous commands just use the arrow keys. So now as you can see the output is same. So what is happening in the do while loop is whenever it is starting to execute, it will first execute the statements inside this do while loop and then check for the condition. So this is the difference between a for loop and a do while loop. In the for loop, before execution of the statement, we need to first check the condition. Whether if the condition is true, only then we'll execute the statements in the do while loop. But in the for loop, sorry, in the do while loop, first we'll execute the statement inside the do while loop once, and then after that we'll be checking the condition. If the condition is true, then again we'll repeat the loop. So this is the basic difference between a for loop and a do while loop. In for loop, before the execution of the statements inside the for loop, we need to check for the condition. In the do while loop, initially the first execution of the statements inside the do while loop will happen, and then after that the condition will be checked, and based on the condition the loop will repeat. So this is the difference between a for loop and a do while loop. In the next kind of while loop we'll look in the next video. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.